I grew up learning multiple languages. मेरी पहली बोली सी पंजाबी जो मैं आज तक बोलता हूँ. My second language was English, which I learned side by side with Punjabi. तो फिर तीसरी भाषा जो मैंने सीखी थी वो थी हिंदी. सिर्फ बोल नहीं सकता, मैं पढ़ और लिख भी सकता हूँ. चौथी ज़ुबान जो मैंने सीखी वो थी उर्दू. और उर्दू और हिंदी के दरमियान जो फ़र्क हैं वो बहुत कम हैं. Y el cinco idioma que obtuve fue el español. Y no soy bueno para hablar español. Und Deutsch ist die sechste Sprache ich lerne. So my point for this video is that I wanted to share my German learning techniques and experience and my journey. It has been a very challenging experience for me. Normally, I am actually okay with learning languages, certain languages, I guess. And German, for some reason, although I love the language, I have a very difficult time grasping it. So I wanted to share the journey with you guys. If there's anyone out there who is wanting to learn German, I can share with you what worked for me. Finally, I know what works for me. And since I've learned those techniques, I have gained a lot more knowledge in learning German. Hello and welcome back to our channel. We are nearing that date when we will be traveling back to Germany, and I personally cannot wait until I submerge myself back into the German language, because every time I'm there, my language skills get even better. Because I wanted this video to be a little bit helpful to someone that may need some tips on how to learn German and what worked for me, maybe that might work for you as well. So what I've done is to make it a little bit more simplified. I've broken this video into 3 sections. The first is how I got introduced to Germany and how it basically was very detrimental to my learning capabilities. And I think that had a huge effect on me not being able to learn the German language as quickly as I probably could have. Sorry, it's just all of a sudden the sun went down and it's getting dark. The second part is going to be what worked for me. What actually techniques or the stuff that I did that really helped me to start learning the German language. And that made a huge difference. And then the last part is all of the other add-on things that I do that really enhance that learning curve for me. So without further ado, let's get into it. I went to Germany for the first time 14 years ago. The only thing that I knew about Germany was the narrow-minded history that is taught in USA schools. So I had met Stefan and I was intrigued with the idea of going to Germany with him. And so we went together to Germany. And when I was there for the first time, we went to a small Bavarian village where Stefan is from. We were visiting his family. And no one spoke English, not a single word of English. So I couldn't communicate with anyone. I couldn't communicate with any of Stefan's family, and I couldn't communicate with any of his extended family. And then when I met his friends, which are my friends too now, I couldn't communicate with most of them. Some spoke a little English, but I felt very awkward always because Stefan was constantly translating every conversation, and that is not fun. That is not fun for anyone really in the group because you just cannot have a flow of conversation. So when you are the only person that cannot speak the language, in my experience, it destroys the experience of being in that culture. So if you go to some place like Munich or Berlin especially, I don't know about Hamburg, I haven't been there yet, but Berlin for sure, nearly almost everyone that I came across there speaks English. And the funny thing is now when I actually talk to people in German, they will respond back in English. They immediately realize that I am somewhat struggling with German still. And based on my accent, they realize that I speak English. So they will respond immediately in English, and I respond back in German because I really want to learn the language. But this goes back and forth where now they're actually responding in English and I'm responding back in German. So after this experience, being in Germany for the first time, I decided that I needed to get a tutor. So when I came back to USA, I got a tutor for 3 months. So what worked for me? I bought a lot of books. I bought flashcards. I went through the tutoring for 3 entire months, and I was very disciplined with the tutoring. The problem that I had was I could not be in a classroom situation. I finally realized that it just was not working. My brain, I think at a certain age, it kind of shuts down, or my brain did. I had a very difficult time learning grammar, and die, der, das in the beginning was so difficult for me, and still is in certain cases. Sometimes there is no answer, but when there is an answer, it just seems very complex. And anytime I asked Stefan, for him, it was very difficult to explain why certain things were a certain way. His answer was always, well, this is how we learned it. So I was like, that is not helpful to me. So after a lot of trial and error, I went through books, I went through flashcards, I had a tutor, and I felt I was not getting anywhere with learning German. So I decided to give Rosetta Stone a try. And I have to say, I immediately fell in love with Rosetta Stone. I think it is such an amazing software, such an amazing tool. It absolutely worked for me because I didn't have to sit down and learn the grammar. It was just based on visual learning, and the grammar you kind of grasp on slowly, and it comes to you slowly in sentence form. So you kind of start understanding how grammar works based on the sentence structure. So if you're not familiar with Rosetta Stone, it is a software that you log into, and it's very visual, where they will show you images of subjects. And based on those images, you start forming words. And everything is written out in German, so there is no English. So visually, you're constantly seeing the German language. You're constantly associating those words with photos. And that is very helpful. And those little things add on slowly, and you become so comfortable with speaking in the Rosetta Stone language in that environment. So when you take these tools that you learn and apply it to when you go to Aldi and you want to ask where is the milk, it's okay, it's easy, you've done it in Rosetta Stone. So that really helped. And I remember the first time I went by myself to the store, I needed socks. Of all things, I needed socks. It was cold, it was winter, and I needed winter socks. So I went into a department store, and I went there by myself, and I spoke to an older lady who did not speak a word of English, and that kind of was like a perfect test. And I went to the register, I bought the socks, and I came back to the restaurant where Stefan was waiting for me, and I was so happy. And I told him, I said, this is the first time I've done something by myself in Germany by speaking German to a local. That was mind-blowing to me at that time. Now, the tips that I would give someone who is learning German, the number one thing for me which works is submerging myself into the culture. So what I mean by that is when you go to Germany, when you are in Germany, to go out as much as possible, to go out shopping, to go out just looking at things, to go to a museum. And for me, things were a little bit different because I had a friend circle through Stefan. And after I had the confidence, now what I do is I become part of the conversation. Well, now I'm fully in the conversation, but back then, a few years ago, when I wasn't part of the conversation because I was too afraid to speak, or I was too afraid to speak even in English because I didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable and have to speak in English, I would tell Stefan, please do not translate anything. Let me just work it out. Let me have that conversation and I will speak in German. And that started to build more confidence for me. And also, I noticed that we started enjoying the conversations a lot more. And these friends that had a hard time speaking English now could actually have a conversation with me, and now they're actually very comfortable in speaking in German with me and understanding my broken German, and then they correct me when I do say something that is incorrect grammatically. The second tip that I have is buy children's books. Stories that are meant for little children. And because I already know most of these stories from my childhood, it becomes a little bit fun, and it's very easy to understand words that you don't even know. So you come across new words all the time, like, oh wow, I know what they mean because I know what the story is and I know all the other words that are going around it. So this word must mean this. And this way you learn more vocabulary. The third and the final tip that I have for you is to start watching children's cartoons. So if you have Prime, Amazon in Germany, or the German Netflix, there are quite a few children's cartoons or children's shows. Shows I wouldn't really recommend, but it's the cartoons are very basic language, and they were really, really helpful. I haven't watched those in a long time, but in the beginning they were really, really helpful. So there you go, guys. That is my journey of learning German. If you have any tips for me as far as how I can become a better German speaker, please let me know in the comments. And if you are a person who is like me, who's trying to learn German, I hope that these tips that I've shared with you, which have worked for me, will work for you as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.